Welcome to the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignot, and this is part of my 29 Days of Magic series where I get to interview a Black woman a day, every day for Black History Month. And in today's episode, I'm delighted to speak with Heather Odom, who's a business development manager and so much more. It's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Heather.
Hey, Laura.
What a warm welcome. Hey, Heather.
Yeah, how you doing today? Happy Black History Month.
Exactly. It's a good day. Every day is a good day.
Every day is a good day.
And so very great and so very, very grateful for it all.
So very, very grateful. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Thank you.
So the way the podcast works is the first question is always the same, and the answers are always delightful. And I feel like you're going to have a really good one. So, Heather, what was your first job?
Ooh, my first job was being a mother's helper.
Do tell.
Yeah, so back in the day when there was and when you were a teenager and you wanted to work and you had to, if you were 13, 14, you had to get like a working card in order to work. So I begged and pleaded my mother to let me work, and she said, well, you can't unless you get this card. And I signed up for the card, and then I looked at babysitting places, and I looked at mothers, what they called at the time, mothers helpers opportunities, where you would go and spend time with someone who needed your help for taking care of their infant child or their young child. And that's what I did. That was like my first job, and I loved it so much. And I still have a relationship with that family to this day. The child I took care of, literally to this day, the child I took care of is now, has just proposed to a woman, and he will be getting married, and he's in his late 20s. So I feel so blessed to be able to have created such a long-lasting relationship from my team.
Wow, Heather,
so it was really, really impactful. I learned a lot. But the relationship part was the best. It was absolutely, it was magical.
Mm-hmm. One, that's incredible. Two, why am I not surprised that this is what you do? Because as of everyone, whenever they list out their first job, it's always fascinating to hear when people sort of that first job catapults them to where they end up being today.
Yeah.
And you taking care of folks at such a young age to now where you take care of so much is not at all surprising. So I'd love for you to share like what that career journey from being that mother's helper to where you are today.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you brought that up, because now it's almost like, well, not really, because I know that my spirit, my energy is so focused and centered on helping others. But yes, that would be how I started, and that was the beginning of my journey. So I went from a mother's helper to working in retail. So Benetton, you remember Benetton? Oh my gosh, I used to work for Benetton. I worked for the Gap. When it was 1969, remember when it was like they didn't even have the Gap name. They had like 1969. They were using that as like their brand for like the longest time until then it became the Gap. It was so crazy. And then I went from retail to working in I was a mentee for the Coalition of 100 Black Women in New York. Did a stipend with them at CBS, and that literally was what catapulted my journey. I went into CBS, the flagship station there in New York, because I'm born and raised in New York City, and I couldn't get a job doing an anchor at the time, because that's what I wanted to do. Everybody wants to be an anchor. There's goal and love and everything. And so I had a chance to work in the sales department and as a sales assistant, and I saw all the AEs, and I was like, how do I get that job? And that's literally what happened. I just advanced into becoming an account executive. So I ended up selling TV, radio, print, digital and social. That's been my career path for for most of my work history. I've done it in 3 different geographic regions: New York, California, Charleston, South Carolina. And so while I may have done some other jobs that really focused on helping others, like pharmaceutical sales and document management in terms of business practices and stuff with the copiers and everything, my main journey has been media and has been media sales and advertising. So I feel really fortunate to have had the path that I've had to where it has led me now, where I'm now currently just, using all those skills in the nonprofit sector for 2 nonprofits, Carolina for All and the Racial Justice Network.
That's so awesome. And it's like, and one, not surprising. So now that you're serving in the nonprofit sector, like what's that transition sort of been like?
It's been a challenge, I will tell you, because in the nonprofit sector, it's not like there's a whole lot of like guidelines and rules. Like, right, you just know that you have to get things done. And thankfully, I have skill sets and energy and will and drive to make sure that anything I touch gets to the finish line. And these, it all depends on in terms of like, if you're in the nonprofit sectors have like levels of, maturity. And so I'm at the level of maturity of like new for the ones that I'm working with right now. They're barely 3 years old. And one of them's only a year and a half old. And so therefore, there's still a lot to be done, a lot of organizational things that need to be put in place. However, these two, Carolina for All, which is voting rights, voting advocacy, social, economic, rural advocacy, domestic workers' rights, and then Racial Justice Network, a civil rights organization focusing on social justice, were able to fortunately win an award for a grant for the world we're in now, the pandemic, which is focusing on reaching the hard to reach communities here in South Carolina, and help to create an access where there is none and to diminish vaccine hesitancy. And so that's kind of where that's what brought me to South Carolina from New York. As I was in the pandemic, I was sat there, and while I was moving from one position to the next because of the pandemic, I literally asked God to put me in a position that I could get paid to help others. And it's interesting that goes all the way back to my very first job. And then while I was helping a family for my first job, now I'm helping others on a much larger scale. And so this is probably the most rewarding experience that I've had. Yeah.
So what's it been like? I know the past year has been interesting around vaccines and vaccine hesitancy. What's been the experience in Carolina?
So the experience in Carolina is that there's it's a state that just is not pro-vaccine. So there were the vaccine percentage was very low when I got here, and so the goal was to try to demystify and encourage and not allow people to think they were doctors, and try to create close the educational gap on vaccines, and then bring the opportunity to them. So when I got here, it was like in the 30s overall for having vaccines, the population. Now we're up in the 50s and 60s, which is good. But still we have a ways to go. So it's a big challenge, Laura, I'll tell you, because you get to the hard to reach areas, like, because I'm in not the country, I'm not in the country, but there is a lot of out country areas where there's just barns and, farmland, and hard to get Wi-Fi or even cellular service. And people live there and they want to get vaccinated, and some of them don't want to get vaccinated. That's those are my people. Those are the people I'm trying to reach, the ones that do and the ones that don't, because I want to encourage the ones that don't to believe in the science, and then for the ones that do, I just want to build a bridge to give them the access to do what they need to do for themselves and their families.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when you're building the bridge of folks who want to get vaccinated, what have you been able to successfully do?
So we've been able to successfully get them to not only get vaccinated, but to share their story. Because we all know that with media, it's all about messaging, content and messaging. And so while I used to sell content and then have other people create the messaging, now I am doing both. And so that's the biggest part, the big, really nice part and reward about this is that when you get to those people that want it and they see, what's happening, they share it out. And so, we encourage the talk up of their experience, and that kind of that domino effect that allows everybody else in the surrounding areas to actually say, okay, how do we do that? That's how we know we're being impacted, is when we get to that person or that family or that subset of people in an area and we're able to get them to share out their experiences. And it's not just always about Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and all that kind of stuff. So, we still know that, especially in these small communities, the power of word and just talking to somebody is extremely impactful. And so we're getting these people to just, tell their neighbor, don't send them a text message, tell your neighbor or tell your community what happened. And that's been working for us. And so people have been calling us churches. We've been working with churches. So that's a huge section, as you know. So we've been able to work with a few churches, and then it went to a lot of churches. And so then we're doing groups of churches. So it's been a really good journey that way.
The increase of the Omicron variant, where do you see you all going next in terms of continuing to vaccinate people or continuing to educate folks? What do you think?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I was on a call the other day with a group of people talking about the state of the pandemic, and now we're in this what now that we don't have any spikes or anything, and that we know Omicron is the most contagious, but now it's not as prevalent, and so we're just looking at what's happening, and there's this huge lays of I don't care, I don't want to I want to get vaccinated, but after that, if something happens, I don't care. There's this real pushback now on as a whole, and I'm not talking about any political group or any specific community. As a whole, people are just tired of the rigors of what.
It's the exhaustion.
They're just exhausted. So what we're doing as a group is we're still creating the access. We have not let go of our messaging for access and opportunity. And then we're still using every chance we get to demystify and challenge people not to create their own science, but to use the science that's been provided. And that's really been the biggest challenge, because people think they're doctors or they think their friends are doctors. And then they go with that and they use that as their absolute for motivation to do something. So we're still focused on trying to, move that out the way so that we can get to the truth, or at least to some level of understanding with those individuals, and still get people vaccinated and create the opportunity for families.
You are doing the Lord's work, because you know that is not easy at all. Kind of looking back on all the really awesome things you've done in your career, what do you think you'd tell 18-year-old Heather?
Whew. That's a great question. What I would tell 18-year-old Heather is never stop believing in the power of the ability that you have in your mind. Because what I have learned through the pandemic, and I know a lot of people share the same thing, is that when you're forced to sit and think, there's some really, really powerful things that come out of that. And when you're young, you tend to not really think about, pun on the word, not really put value on your visions and your thoughts. So I would tell 18-year-old Heather, leverage the power of your vision, because leveraging the power of your vision literally is the force behind everything you do. And it has been, I would say, what brought me here. So that's what I would tell her. I would say, never diminish the power of your mind and your thoughts. Use it as not just your stepping stone, but as the wind beneath your wings to move you forward for everything.
That's really important advice. I think that's been one of the kind of weird gifts of the pandemic, is that time to actually sit and think. Because I would say the same thing, where like I was on the go nonstop for 9 straight years, and to have a year, well, not 2 years where I was now, I had to sit at home and had to reevaluate what matters, what I really want to do, and what I can do, and stretch in a lot of different ways. And the benefits have been immeasurable. So I totally agree with you on that front.
Yeah, I would say that I've also been able to share that out too, like to not just realize that, but also to share it out. Because look, we all have recreated ourselves in some way, shape, or form, and it all starts with how we think about who we are and what we're doing. And so if we could just go back to that seed, that thought, everything else becomes easier. You just have to retrain yourself to do that on a regular basis. And the pandemic, I'll tell you, that's the silver lining of the pandemic. Pushed everybody into a quiet space. And look what's happening. Look at all these, it's like the birth of things that are just everywhere you look. Things are happening, new businesses, the entrepreneurial sector has taken off leaps and bounds because of what happened, and people had to go inside and they couldn't go to work. So it forced people to really take a deeper look at what they're doing and who they were and what they were capable of. And that's where I think the biggest silver lining is with the pandemic. We all realized our capabilities. Look at it. Amazing.
So, yeah, and 1,000% agree with you. So, obviously you're doing lots of really great stuff, but for Heather, what do you do for your self-care?
Yeah, so it's hard because I just sat down the other day and thought about, I gained weight, I work from home, so I'm always on my computer, and I have my rigor of timeline of how I work and where I work in my apartment. And so I really have had to take a look at what I need to do on a daily basis for Heather, like Heather's time. So exercising, I've reincorporated, I have my spiritual corner, which that actually has never changed, but I really dedicate my mornings to my conversation with God. That's really important to me. And I don't let anybody interrupt that. And then I have, my Saturdays, that's my turn off day. So I'm a big obviously I have to use social media for work and everything else. But Saturday, for the most part, I stay off any social media channel. That's my day to decompress from the internet. And I just focus on me if I can, if I don't have an event or something like that going on. And I just do whatever I want to do, watch a movie, read a book. Right now, I'm listening to Rhonda Byrne's Hero on Kindle. Like, I do things like that. I have a special project that I'm going to be working on with my daughter. So, like, those are the things I'm doing to kind of, keep myself energized and empowered and really focus on my health, and all the things that need to be in place for me. Because guess what? You and I both know you can't be effective if you're not in your strongest position. So I've had to reevaluate that recently. And those are the things that I'm holding in place for myself.
I love it. And I love the Saturday detox. I think that's a really good thing to do. And I might take you up on that, because one
Yeah,
day where where I just don't look at anything online, I don't know what I would do with myself, but it
yeah,
would be
yeah,
it would be good to try it at the very
yeah.
least.
Yeah, I've actually shared that out with a few people, and they actually do it. They actually do a Saturday detox. They don't post, they don't get online, they don't do anything. So,
Oh, all right. I'll have
hmm
to think about that one. So, last question for you: do you
yeah,
have a give and or an ask of the audience?
absolutely. My only give, well, I'm gonna start with the ask first, if that's okay. The ask is
Go
that
for it.
everybody, yeah, is that anyone who's listening to this, if there's anything that you take that hits a big like aha for you in your spirit, in your mind, in your heart, I ask that you share it out, because by sharing something that you hear moves you positively, you literally are creating a golden link in the chain of good. And so just take that one little step and share something that you heard that motivated you, and reinforce that golden link in the chain of good in the universe. I'm really, really serious about those things, those positive reinforcements. And then my give is that I'm going to make sure that, my process and everything that I'm doing with Carolina for All and the Racial Justice Network is being uh, shared in the way that it gives somebody an opportunity or a platform. So to use their voice, or to talk about their story, a story they've never told, a story they've always wanted to share, so that there's some type of transformational impact. So my give is always going to be using my energy to be transformative, constant, never stopping, always gas on the pedal, never taking it off. If I'm not doing something that allows some level of transformation, then that would be not good for me. And so I'm going to always do that. So that's my ask and my give. My ask is to reinforce the golden link in the chain of good by sharing anything that you hear with somebody, and reinforce that golden link. And then I'm going to give all that I can to make sure that I'm transformative all the time.
I love it. What a wonderful gift. Oh, Heather, you're such a delight. You're one of my faves. And I'm so glad we have to have this conversation and just share some of your wonderful wisdom, because I knew you'd preach, so I'm not surprised. So, and the work that you're doing is just so incredible, and I'm just so delighted that you're making this all happen in places where they need it the most. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for taking some time today and
Yeah.
sharing your story. We're going to put all the details in the show notes for folks to connect with you.
Okay, great.
And with Carolina for All and all the really great work that you do. And thank you so much for being part of 29 Days of Magic.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me be part of such an amazing force, Black History Month, and your platform to lift as you climb. Because remember, I gave you a shirt like that because that's what you do all the time. So thank you for your never-ending stopping of lifting as you climb.
Oh, thank you, Heather. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And that is our show.